What's up, everybody? Jeff Morris here, Think International. We're at the Sticky Teams Conference, and I'm sitting here with Ryan Meeks, who's from EastLake Church up in Bothell, Washington.
Yeah, Bothell and Seattle and a number of other cities.
Number of locations.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are actually a pretty young church as far as planted, what, 2005?
Yeah, we're coming up on our 8-year anniversary this coming February.
Planted a church, and now it's multi-location. Thousands of people are coming. So many people look at your, quote-unquote success and go, man, that's what I want, that's what I love. But it doesn't come without cost. Is that right?
Absolutely true, yeah.
What are some of the things that you've had to go through in these growing pains over these last few years?
You say it's everybody, church
sure.
planter's dream,
Right.
but honestly, my dream was so small when we set out to start the church that for me, I feel like we're always playing catch up. Like I don't have this big vision for like what's next. Or people are like, what's the 5-year plan?
Sure,
I'm like,
sure.
That's actually what I love about Larry, because he kind of released me from this pressure to be a kind of leader that I'm not.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's fine. You're more Macedonian call than Joshua. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm liberated from this guilt of feeling like I don't know what's next. So, you asked the question, has it cost something along the way? And sure, it's cost me in the sense of, I guess, releasing sort of my small dream for what God wanted to do that was so much bigger. And then there's a lot of growing pains along the way, because anytime you grow that fast, you're going through staff people, because not everybody who's great at a certain size can come with you to the next side.
Right.
And that can be painful, because we work really tightly together. We always say we operate on 2 tracks simultaneously. We're a family and a pro sports team.
Okay.
And the temptation in any organization is to choose one over the other. Right. And so we don't walk it perfectly, but we said we want to stay in the tension. Yeah. And say, look, we operate as a team, but we also operate as a family, and both are always going to try to split us in half and own us in one side or the other. And so that creates relational difficulty and heartbreak, because sometimes people leave, or sometimes you have to let people go. I think that's been the number one hardest thing on me, because I'm a relational leader. That's how I lead. So if I were to look back on 8 years and say what did it cost me the most in what area, I would say relationally it's been hard, just because those have been realities.
You mentioned earlier about being Larry kind of helping like free you, because a lot of young leaders, the young pastors out there, and especially young lead pastors, are kind of put into a box of this is how you need to be.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say we put ourselves in a box, because people will say like, oh, well, they'll pick sort of their tribe, and they pick their chief, right? Yeah. And they pick this one pastor, and so now I'm in his tribe, and then what happens is we realize I'm nothing like him, and so we put pressure on ourselves to be like him, and that's trouble for all of us. I mean, it's good to apprentice under a mentor. I don't think we can be disciples without picking an earthly master's a bad word, but but somebody to follow, and there's health there. But Perry was calling him Yoda earlier. Larry's our Yoda, which I totally agree. Yeah. But there's a negative side to that, where we end up trying to become someone we were never intended by God to be like, and that's where it gets unhealthy.
Yeah. And how many sites do you guys have right now?
Well, last year we were in 1, and now we're in 8. So this just a couple weeks ago, in the fall, we launched 5 on the same weekend.
Oh my gosh! Now, what made you guys decide then, after being in 1 for so long, to go to 8?
Well, we were out of space, and I honestly didn't want to do multi-site. I had a lot of very arrogant reasons for why I thought it wasn't the way to go. But I got the pressure was what forced us to do something about it. It's kind of like the early church stayed in Jerusalem and didn't obey to go out until the persecution came. And for me, I'm like, I don't want to do multi-site. And then I realized we're done. We cannot. Either I spend the next 12 years raising $40 million and squeeze our people to build a big building and fight the city, or we need to look at being better stewards and look at multi-site. And so for us, we went all in. Right now, we're video everywhere. There's not even a main campus.
Right.
I don't ever preach live.
Now, how does that work? Yeah,
well, I don't ever preach live. So we film the message. I do it in front of my staff, which is great for them, because there's no pressure on them. They hear the message. They're ready and processing for what their people are going to hear later. So when they have opportunities to pastor them through the material, because the Sunday service is never as far as that goes, They get to do that, and then after we record it on Thursdays, then on the weekends it just goes out video everywhere.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And has that affected attendance like at your main campus at all, or are people just kind of getting used to it? Or
Well, I just told you we don't have a main campus.
well, sorry,
Watch your mouth,
my
boy.
my bad, my bad. If there's like, you know what you know what I'm saying though.
Yeah, well, and it was an intentional thing because we were in one location, running about 5,000 people, and we bump over that or whatever, but not counting Easter, it was like 5,000. And we made it a strategic decision. We said, if we're going to go multi-site, we don't want to just do it by like jettisoning out a bunch of satellites, and this is kind of the thing. We like, let's strategically kill this location in the sense of, so let's spread it out. We were a regional church already. And so we said, these people are driving, many of them, long distances to come here. Let's get them back out in their cities. Right. It's hard to be the church where you live if you attend a church where you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, honestly, going from live, big location, all that kind of stuff, to video, at first, we pissed off a lot of people. I mean, we dropped at least like 800 people in the first couple months. Not only because we went to video, but because we screwed it up so bad. That's a whole nother story of how we tried hologram and live over fiber optic. And we always joke like, you know, trying to do live, there were so many problems. It's like trying to date the hot girl in high school. Like everybody wants her, but she's not going to be faithful to you. So we bailed on live and all that kind of stuff. But it forced people to make a decision.
Right.
Like, look, am I going to get used to this?
Sure.
Or, you know, is it just something I'm unwilling to walk through a new change? And now we've built back up to where we were before, but it took some time. Because one, we screwed it up, and two, it's a big change to go from one location, big site, and say, we're embracing a much more localized ministry model.
Wow. You're known a little bit for pushing the envelope. Exactly.
All right.
You know, I mean, you try things, you know, and you really go for it. And you're reaching people. I mean, it's not like it's not working. It is working. People are getting saved and discipled, and you know, and being pastored in your churches. But what do you feel like there is a line in ministry that churches shouldn't cross when it comes to whether it's events, programs? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think I do, but I think the answer is more simple. It's, you know, yeah, absolutely. There's a line we shouldn't cross. A line of idolatry, a line of sin, you know, and things like this. So, I think sometimes the problem though is we make church so different than normal life that we perpetuate the sacred secular divide for people, and so. Stuff that would be normal in normal life, we're like, oh, you couldn't do that in church. And like, if we continue to make church so countercultural in ways that really have nothing to do with sinful action, then we continue to propagate the idea in people's minds that like, this is the place where I meet God, and then God's not anywhere else. And I don't want people to have like too much of an intense idea of God's presence at church, because I think you can have just as much of an intense experience with God at work. And if we can't, then this whole business is really more propagated on us having like a stronger feeling of transcendence in this building, and you know, then we're just selling drugs. Really, you know, come here for your crack. This is the good crack.
This is the good crack.
Yeah,
this is the crack house, right?
And every 7 days you got to come in and get your shot, and you feel great, but then you go back out and God's not there.
So you've really tried to blend both, and you're seeing success at it.
Yeah, I think that the more just normal we can be in the sense of, like, I believe in the transcendent power and transformative power of the Holy Spirit, but it can't be unique to our gatherings. Like, we need to live it out in a way that's like, and by the way, once you leave this place, it's ongoing. Like, the kingdom is already at hand, and it doesn't just happen when we gather.
And it's, I guess it's like a transparency that takes place in the church and in the culture and real. Now, and within that, you're a real transparent teacher, incredibly transparent. You talk a lot about your failures as opposed to like rah rah rah. Yeah. A lot
of material for me to work with there.
A lot of failures out there, but within your transparency, have you ever gotten any backlash from the people in your church for it, or do you feel like you're more appreciated because of it?
I think for the most part, our church doesn't really complain about much. But yeah, I have, and it's generally the negative feedback I get for that kind of stuff is not from people who are East Lakers. It's like, somebody brought their mom, or a church person heard about us. That's the problem with growing big, is you get a name in the Christian community, and we've tried really hard to stay under the radar.
Sure.
But at a certain size, it's almost impossible to keep doing that. And I remember not even 6 months ago, there was a young girl in our church who was killed in a car accident. She's 9 years old. And it just really rocked our community, and it was kind of a big deal. It was on the news a lot. And I got up the next Sunday, and I'm kind of a weepy person anyway. I mean, I tried to address, like, hey, I know a lot of us are struggling right now with the loss of this girl. It seems so tragic. Like, where is God in the midst of this? And I shared, like, sometimes when this kind of stuff happens, it's hard for me to believe in God when tragedies like this happen. And kind of just broke in that moment. And I got the longest, angriest letter about how I missed an opportunity to preach God's sovereignty. And I just thought, man, if we can't create space where it's okay to be where David was sometimes. When you read the Psalms, there's a great portion of them that he's like, God, why have you totally hosed me? And then it ends. It's not wrapped up. It's not like, but God's in control, and that's why, Christian worship music is always so terrified of leaving people in the space of like, God, where are you? We always have to wrap it up and tie it up because we don't like the idea of dealing with experiencing the loss of God's presence in our life, even though, don't tell anybody, we all experience it all the time. We do, but we don't want to talk about it because then, because we've embraced this idea like faith is something that I have to squeeze out. It's like this constipated, like, I believe, but a lot of times I don't believe, and we gotta re-grasp a holistic view of faith that says, look, I may have mentally ascended to something, but the evidence of my trust in you, if you say to me, this building's on fire, follow me, I can trust in you, but here's how you know I trust in you, I'm following you. So I think in the midst of, I don't know where God is, and yet I'm going to obey him, that's real faith, not the absence of doubt or the absence of that sense of like, God has abandoned me. Like, what is going on? And creating an atmosphere where you can be in that space. I think people are more likely to grow if they can be honest first about where they're at. I don't think you can grow from where you're at unless you can be honest about where you're at in the first place. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're building on a false foundation. You're pretending to be here, and I'm trying to grow. That's fake. So it'll get crushed, and you'll fall underneath. You got to first be like, I don't even know where God is. I'm pissed off at him. He took my dad. Whatever else it is, you got to build on, and then you can start there, and you can actually build a real, faith.
Honesty, man. I love it. Ryan, thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing at EastLake. Think International, sticky teams.